Now we throw the waveform in, and that takes us up to 438K per bullet from the turret.
What's up, agents? How's everybody doing? Hope you're all hanging in there, being as safe as you guys need to be. So it's been a long time since I've come out with a video like this. I haven't felt like there's been anything in the game monumental enough to necessitate me coming back and making any sort of guide. There's nothing that's really inspired me enough to do it. That being said, I am stoked that here we are, going into year 8, and we're still getting new content. We're getting new gear. They keep giving us additional content. In fact, for the most part, free, right? I mean, we had 2 real DLCs, right? We got Brooklyn and we got New York. And so then everything else has just been basically, you bought the game once, here you go, you keep getting stuff. This is the first time in a while that I'm back making a video, and I finally felt like they brought something to the game enough that I had to look at it and check it out. And that particular thing right now is the Impetus Wyvern named chess piece with the new perfect kinetic momentum. This new version of kinetic momentum, the perfected version, made me have to go back and look at some numbers here. So, without further ado, I want to go ahead and take a look at this new chess piece. All right, hey, thank you so much. If you guys actually get anything out of this, smashing that like button would be greatly appreciated. Hopefully by the end of this video, I will have earned your subscription if I don't already have it. Do me a favor. The best way to help the channel is to share the video if you think it would be beneficial for somebody else. And do me a favor, any comments you have, anything I missed, anything you want to see in the future, please leave a comment down below. All right, let's get into it. All right, dudes, so before we get into any build ideas and stuff, let's first talk about this new chess piece. So it's called the Impetus. It's a Wyvern gear, Wyvernware piece of gear. So it does innately give us that one piece bonus of plus 8% skill damage. You got a second piece, it gives us that status effects. We're not worried about that. We do not want that in this build. Of course, it probably has some other implications where it can be used, and I'll be looking into that later. Primarily, we're looking at the Astrone build and maximizing that damage for right now. But it is a skill tier as the core attribute. We're going to, of course, be looking for skill damage on it, and then hopefully either skill haste or armor per second or crit hit chance, crit hit damage if that's the route you want to go. But what is the thing that sets this apart is its talent. So this is perfect kinetic momentum. So standard kinetic momentum, every second that you have a skill that's not on cooldown, it will build a stack. The standard version is up to 15 stacks. The new perfected version is up to 18 stacks. Keep in mind this is per skill, so that means you can get up to 30 stacks, or in the case of the perfected version, up to 36 stacks at one time. Ultimately, that means this is going to net us either 45% maximum skill damage bonus with the standard kinetic momentum, and the perfected version, we will be able to get up to 54% bonus damage, bonus skill damage. So that is the largest skill damage bonus, notwithstanding the momentum backpack, which we will get into in just a few moments. All right, so now that we know the piece of gear that this new build idea is based around, let's get into the standards of the build, things that a lot of you guys may already know about, but you guys who are new, we're going to break it all down. So you may want to grab some popcorn. It's not going to be a short video. I'm going to try to cover this as comprehensively as possible, hopefully without reiterating myself too many times. So first off, let's talk about the specialization. All right, guys, so for the specialization, we're going to be using the Technician. So this will give us the innate amped ability, which gives us +1 skill tier no matter what. That means we only need to effectively run 5 core attributes of skill tier, and we will still be at skill tier 6, which we want to hit. It gives us access to the linked laser pointer. The linked laser pointer will attach to long rails, and any target that you aim at that's within range, it will pulse. It's a large range. This does 2 benefits. One is it highlights the enemies, even behind cover, so it lets you and your teammates keep track of them. If you want to use a damage talent like Spotter on the chest piece or Flatline on your weapon, preferably both, the linked laser pointer is great, as you do not need to run a pulse. Anything you aim at, you will automatically pulse, so that damage bonus will immediately take effect. Now, any stationary skill will get the benefit of the Faraday field. So this means anything within 5 meters of our turret will be immune to disrupt and shock. That includes us and our proxies. So if we have our drone out and our drone happens to be close enough to the turret when, say, a dog explodes or an EMP goes off or something like that, it will actually protect your drone and keep it active. Now, a great one that people often overlook is the overclock CPU. Keep in mind, you can select either plus 10% skill damage or 10% healing. Of course, you want to make sure that you have the 10% skill damage selected. And lastly, as far as the attributes we're going to be using from Technician that actually apply, we got Dismantling. This is a 12% additional damage bonus to any form of robotics. These are things like drones, the Warhounds. Note that there is diminishing returns, but overall, even in endgame, this is still a 3 to 4% amount of bonus damage to any of those robotic elements. Now, I will just note, so running the Technician does give us access to the Artificer Hive and the mods that go along with that. We're not going to be using that for this. Do keep in mind, if you really wanted to maximize the damage of, say, just the turret, you could go with the Artificer Hive, and that would buff the turret significantly. I like, the fact that I can split up damage between the turret and the drone, and I have 2 things grabbing aggro. So I don't like running the Artificer Hive, but if you have a teammate running it, boom. Alright, so now let's talk quickly about the brand sets. So we're going to be running 1 piece of Wyvern, obviously, since the Impetus is a Wyvern piece. This gives us plus 8 skill damage. Now next, I'm going to be looking at running 2 pieces of Hana-Yu. This will give us 10% skill haste, 10% skill damage. And then we have the choice of either running 2 pieces of Empress International, which would give us 10% skill health and 10% skill damage, and then running an exotic. Or you could run the 3rd piece of Empress International, which will add plus 8% skill efficiency. And while it's only 8%, keep in mind that applies to the damage, duration, health, cooldown, and I think there's a few other things. But so skill efficiency is a prime perk, but if we're looking for maximum damage, something like the waveform, the momentum, would kick the damage up even more. So it's really up to you, or maybe if you don't have those exotics, right? Maybe you just want to run 3 pieces of Empress International. So those are the 3 brand sets I recommend. I will note that Murakami does have a plus 18% skill damage bonus as a 3-piece, but it would be such a waste. You'd lose out on so much damage by running the first 2 pieces. So, but I thought I'd note that, Murakami does have a very large skill damage bonus at 18%. All right, obviously, when we talk about core attributes, you're going to want to be running skill tier, but keep in mind, amped lowers the requirements, so we only need 5 skill tier to have skill tier 6. There are certain reasons why you may elect to still run 6 pieces. One is the capacitor. The way the capacitor works, it amplifies the weapon damage based off the number of skill tiers that you have. Also, the momentum's damage bonuses, the short-term bonus is based off the number of core attributes you have for weapon, armor, and skill tier. So keep in mind that while you only need to run skill tier 5 because of amped, with certain builds, you may elect to run all 6 pieces of skill tier regardless. Now, as far as what you would do with that with that extra core attribute, you could run armor if you wanted a little more survivability. I think most people would probably run weapon damage just to get a little more oomph when you're actually shooting the enemies. And considering how much aggro the drone and the turret grab, you should be able to have a bit more survivability, and the armor should be essential. But again, up to you, user's choice. Now, as far as our minor attributes, obviously you're going to want skill tier on every single piece that you could have it. After that, for the secondary, it's user's choice again. You know, I actually, depending on how I'm playing in real game, not just trying to get the highest damage numbers in the gun range, but for actual gameplay, I like to run two crit hit damage, 2 skill haste, and I like to run 1 armor regen. You got to get some armor regen into your build somehow. If you're running Memento, obviously this is probably not going to apply to your build, since before you know it, you're going to have a whole bunch of armor regen rocking. But as far as just a standalone, some armor regen is always beneficial. Also keep in mind we should have 3 mod slots. Again, you can pick whatever you want. You can go with skill haste if you want it. You'll see me running different mods. I'll play around with it. Really, you only need either the armor per second as a secondary attribute, or an armor on kill mod. And if you're going to choose between the two, I would say probably 1 armor per second secondary attribute is probably the way to go, because it's always working in the background. You'll always be having some armor regen happening. You don't have to count on getting a kill. Alright, so now let's talk about the talents for the chest and the backpack. First, we'll talk about chest talents. So they're skilled and perfectly skilled. Skilled has a 25% chance on a skill kill to reset your skills. The perfected version, the Caesar's Guard, it's a 30% chance. There's Spotter and Perfect Spotter. These give you either a 15% or 20% amplified damage bonus to pulse enemies. This is both weapon damage and skill damage. So if you're building into pulsing and the spotter idea, this can be highly beneficial. There's Overwatch and Perfect Overwatch. Why would you want these? Well, if you're running in a group and you want to not only buff yourself, but buff your entire team, after being in cover for 10 seconds, or I think 8 seconds for the perfected version, you get the weapon and the damage bonus that's applied to you and your entire team. So if you do run a lot of team stuff, having somebody run Overwatch is pretty sweet. Next, there's Glass Cannon and Perfect Glass Cannon. Actually, I will right out the gate say you do not want to run Perfect Glass Cannon, because I think it's Providence, and the problem is, because of what the brand said is, you actually will lose out damage, even though it's a 30% multiplier versus 25% multiplier. The actual base damage that you drop, you actually lose out damage, and you take 60% damage from everything instead of 50% additional damage from everything. So just avoid Perfect Glass Cannon no matter what. And Glass Cannon itself, you do amplified 25% additional damage from all sources, but you take 50% more damage. Now, why Glass Cannon is arguably a better perk than Kinetic Momentum, Glass Cannon, again, applies to all damage, and there's no ramp-up time like Kinetic Momentum has. It's instantaneous. But do keep in mind the caveat, you will take a bunch more damage. So, just something to keep in mind. And now that brings us, of course, to Kinetic Momentum, and of course the Impetus with the new Perfect Kinetic Momentum. So both of these perks stack up per skill, and they will give you 1.5% skill damage or 2% repair skill per stack. Each skill can stack up. So that means in the case of the regular, 15 stacks times 2, we can get up to 30 stacks, which equates to 45% bonus skill damage when we're completely ramped up. Now, looking at the new Impetus the new Impetus chest piece. Jesus, I'm already screwing it up. This can get up to 18 stacks, so that's 36 total. which gets us up to 54% skill damage from the backpack. Again, from the chest piece when fully ramped up. And maybe why I'm thinking backpack is the only skill damage bonus that's larger from any one piece of gear is the momentum backpack. And the reason for that, if you are running, and this may be an argument to run 6 skill tier as core, first of all, if you build up all 30 stacks of the long-term bonus, that will get you the 30% weapon damage, the 30% skill efficiency. And notice that's skill efficiency, not skill damage. So that's significantly better because that buffs, again, the skill damage, but also the duration, the health. It buffs your cooldown. And in addition, the long-term buff will also net you up to 3% armor regen per second. So again, the momentum backpack will eliminate the need for that, for having any regen. But the other thing is the short-term bonus. If we have all 6 stacks for 10 seconds, if you have 6 core, it'll give you 5% skill efficiency per stack. So that's 30%. So I'm basically talking about the momentum already, but that's up to 60% skill efficiency bonus for 10 seconds with that 5-minute 30% bonus that's going on that gets refreshed each time you pick up a trophy. So the largest bonus that you're going to get damage-wise from armor, from gear, is from the backpack, the momentum. The second largest bonus is from the new chest piece, the Impetus, and they work together. And now the only other piece of gear that I'm aware of, correct me if I'm wrong, that can give more of a damage bonus than the Impetus right now is the capacitor. Again, this is ramping it up to full stacks because we can get up to the 40 stacks and it's 1.5 each. So similar to the backpack, this is 60% bonus skill damage. Notice, this is not skill efficiency. And I have an argument I've been arguing for years. If they made it skill efficiency, this would actually buff healer builds too. And the capacitor would then be the best in class, best in slot weapon for any healer build as well. But I digress. So that being said, kinetic momentum, perfect kinetic momentum right now is by far a much more powerful perk than even glass cannon is, solely from a skill damage perspective. But remember, as soon as we start adding in weapon damage, damage from area of effect, status effects, and things like that, glass cannon does have the potential to ultimately let you do more overall damage. But if you're talking about just skill damage, Impetus is now it. Alright, so quickly before going on and talking about exotics, which we've basically already gotten into, let's quickly talk about backpacks and the 2 talents that are worth consideration. Perfect tech support comes on an Alp piece, so Alps Summit. So we would be losing out on potential skill damage because Alps doesn't bring anything to the table for skill damage. So let's take perfect tech support off. Normal tech support will give you, on a skill kill, 25% bonus skill damage for 25 seconds, or 27 seconds in the perfect case, which we're not going to look at. The other one, which will give you an equivalent combined arms, but we would not even consider that when the force multiplier exists. It's Hana U. We of course want 2-piece Hana U in our build for the skill haste and the skill damage, and that brings perfect combined arms, which upon shooting an enemy for 3 seconds grants us a 30% skill damage bonus. So this is the equivalent of what would be the Memento skill efficiency bonus, that we can proc very easily over and over again. And so if you are going to be going with waveform, beacon, any exotic that's not in the backpack slot, I do recommend using the combined arms, the perfect combined arms of the force multiplier, provided you have the survivability to be able to keep shooting enemies, blocking that bonus. Alright dudes, I hope you're hanging in there. Now let's quickly talk about exotic gear that can be used in the gear slots. So, first of all, kind of niche, but there's the beacon. This is a weapon core, so that would, it would still work because we got amp going on. It's got weapon core, but what this does is this will give you, if you're next to one of your skills, 15% critical hit damage, 8% skill efficiency and 1% armor regen per second, just for being next to one of your skills. The big reason why you would consider Beacon is if you're running in a team and you're near an ally, it doubles the bonus. So it would be 30% crit hit damage, 15% skill efficiency, and 2% armor regen. But that's for you and any ally that's within the radius. So this could be considered, but again, this is not going to give us the actual overall damage benefits that we're looking for, but still would work nice in this build, particularly in a team. Now, there's the waveform, and the waveform is the second most beneficial exotic as far as damage. It basically gives you a 30% oscillating damage bonus that goes between skills. So overall, it's a 15% damage bonus from the exotic talent, and it comes with skill damage on it. So it's effectively a 25% damage bonus all the time, but a good portion of that bounces between your skills. I use the waveform a lot. It doesn't require any thinking. It just goes into the build, and it will buff damage of one of your skills or both of your skills all of the time. Now there's the Ninja Bike, and we run a lot of builds with the Ninja Bike. As you guys know, this will add +1 to each brand set or gear set. So this just increases some flexibility with builds. You can kind of mess around. Unfortunately, very few builds. In fact, the only build that I've ever found so far that the Ninja Bike has increased the maximum damage over other variations has been my Ninja Boom build, which is a full explosives build. Ironically enough, based on my very first build I ever did when this game came out, was an explosives build. And it's the only iteration. Hopefully, if I'm smart enough, I will have taken a screenshot and have it up here now where you can see. It's the only time the Ninja Bike has caused me to do the most damage of any variation of the build. But it does add a lot of flexibility, and if you don't have some of these other exotics, or you just want to try to run the Ninja Bike, great. Next, the only reason I would consider this, if you want to run an exotic, you don't have anything else, would be a Costas Go Bag. Costas gives you a bunch of little things. I think it's like every 60 seconds or something, you can toss a grenade, it'll overcharge you, and you get the grenade refunded. It's all right, but Costas has never been something that I'm like, okay, I'm going to build around it, and it really does not benefit this build. But you could use it for a free overcharge, once a minute or whatever it is, if you wanted to do that. That takes us to the momentum. And overall, even though in the gun range we can't effectively test this, I am quite positive saying that a build using the Impetus, the momentum, and the capacitor in a solo game ultimately is what would yield you the maximum amount of damage you could possibly get. When you've ramped up all the long-term buff to the full 30 stacks, and then you are picking up the short-term buff, the combination of those, along with the 40 stacks of the capacitor, and a fully ramped up set of perfect kinetic momentum talents, you will be outputting more damage than I think anything else in the game would be able to put out using this without outside influence, without overcharge, without an artificer high from a teammate, without future initiative, full armor bonus, without empathic resolve healing bonus, without a teammate giving you overwatch. There are quite a few extraneous bonuses that could stack up to this, and unfortunately I don't have any footage. You're able, if you have a teammate that runs a full support build, it is so easy to hit over 500,000 damage per bullet with your turret. But again, you're counting on a teammate, somebody to really just run all the right perks and to kind of nerf themselves and what they can do in order to buff you. So still a lot of fun, and if you can get a teammate to do it, there's nothing greater than almost seeing 600,000 damage per bullet from your assault turret. All right, goddamn, this is a long video, right? All right, we're going to talk about the weapons, and then we'll show a little bit of gameplay inside the inside the gun range, and maybe I'll even include, if I go and do it, some gameplay of the momentum version of the build I was talking about. But let's quickly talk about the weapons. So first of all, to note, damage to targets out of cover and damage to armor on your weapons does not have any effect on bullets from your drone, your assault turret, or your sniper turret. Luckily, if you're running the mortar turret, it absolutely does. Both of them work, so keep that in mind. Let's talk about talents you would want on your high-end or named weapons. So, first one, real super easy, spike and perfect spike. You get a headshot, and for 15 seconds, you get a 20% skill damage bonus. However, what I recommend is using the Surge. This is the rifle with perfect spike. This will give you a 25% bonus. So, and it's really easy. And up to you. Of course, you can use spike on any sort of weapon you want. If you want it on an automatic weapon, just to hit the headshot easier, fine. But I do not think spike is one of the best talents as far as damage goes, but it's easy to proc, and you don't have to stay out of cover for very long, so it does increase your survivability over, say, something like In Sync, which we have to shoot the target every 5 seconds, and if we do that, that gives us, every time we shoot a target with our weapon, our skills get a 15% damage bonus. Anytime our skills do damage, we get a 15% weapon damage. If both of them are active at the same time, we get 30% damage to both. And if we're using the perfected version, this is 20%, yielding us 40%. And you can find that on either the test subject assault rifle, which is a nice rifle, but it only has 3 mod slots, and it's really not my favorite. So I elect to go ahead and use the Harmony, which is the rifle. I think it's a little bit easier. You can hit targets further away, and choose whichever you prefer. But yeah, so, and one of the quickest ways to proc damage, if you don't want to, one of the problems with the capacitor, not the capacitor is the best, but it takes a while to ramp up the damage bonus. If you want to get a damage bonus that's pretty close, you can use the test subject or the Harmony to immediately have a 40% skill damage bonus, instead of taking a full magazine to the capacitor to ramp up to 60%. So, food for thought there, and In Sync and Perfect In Sync are my go-tos if I'm not using the capacitor. I will also note, and I'll talk about this in a second, but on the MOP, I always choose to go with In Sync. Before talking about that, let's move on to Flatline and Perfect Flatline. So as we talked about pulsing the Link Laser Pointer and its efficacy at pulsing targets you aim at, Flatline is a perk that's on weapons, and it amplifies damage to pulse targets by 15%. Or if you're using the Kingbreaker assault rifle or the Dare light machine gun, both of those come with the Perfect Flatline, and this will give you 20% amplified damage against pulse targets. Now again, Flatline, that's only going to increase the weapon damage, it's not going to increase the skill damage. So again, I don't recommend that as a perk, but I wanted to note it because we've already brought up Spotter and Pulsing so many times. I felt it that I should make you guys aware of that. All right, and now lastly is a support perk, and that's Future Perfect or Future Perfected. I forget what because I don't use the perfected version for a very good reason. But so Future Perfect, every time you get a kill, it gives you +1 skill tier up to 3 stacks. However, if you're already at skill tier 4 or above, that can put you at overcharge. And since I'm running skill tier 6, all I need is 1 kill, boom, I'm at overcharge. And that overcharge will last 15 seconds. Now, the reason why I say it's pointless to run the Future Perfected, the perfect version, the perfect version, while it does increase the duration from 15 seconds to 19 seconds for the +1 skill tier, when you get to the overcharge, the overcharge is still only 15 seconds like the standard variation. And since most of you will already be at skill tier 6, what does it matter if you're using the perfected version if you don't get any of the bonus that the perfected version adds to it or brings to the table, right? So, what I tend to do is I just run Future Perfect on my sidearm, or generally my backup boomstick, as that has the easiest potential to one-shot and kick me into overcharge, as you guys have, any of you have watched my damage testing or watch the damage testing after this, that's what I always use. I always use a backup boomstick with Future Perfect when I want to proc my own overcharge, which I never do in game. I don't use the backup boomstick in game. We'll talk about it in a second. But so those are the 4 high-end perks that I would recommend. And really, there's 2 real choices that I have that I run side by side with my exotic. And that's either the Harmony, if I want that instant perfect in sync 40% damage bonus, or most of the time, if I want a bit of extra survivability, I will run the Mop. The Mop is 10% of your armor on kill, and that's whether you get the kill or your skills get the kill. And this is one of the best support weapons in the game, because for my AFK versions of the build, I would be holding the Mop in my hand, because that way, in case I take any damage from anything, provided my skills are getting kills faster than I'm taking damage, I'm repairing that from the Mop. Now, I choose to go with InSync on it, so in case I'm not AFKing and I want to get a little damage bonus, I can get an immediate 30% damage bonus. Yeah, it's not the 40% from Perfect InSync, but still, to be able to have that instant 30% damage bonus and be able to get that healing every time I get a kill, it just works super easy and you don't really have to think about it. Now, to address the backup boomstick comment a moment ago, for the sidearms, yeah, backup boomstick is great. It comes with that 17% shotgun damage bonus, which helps to knock the dudes down even faster to proc Future Perfect for an overcharge. But, we also got the card TDI Custom that you could choose. This gives +1 skill tier. At this point, you could drop down and only have to run 4 core attributes of skill tier and still be at skill tier 6. You could put Future Perfect on it. You could put InSync on it. And so that's just an easy way to add an extra weapon core or armor core if you wanted to. But in this new era, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Quick Step, which is a newer named sidearm that brings us the talent sport mode. It's plus 20% movement speed. It doesn't add up with, it doesn't work with any other movement speed bonus, but most of us aren't going to be running that. And this is just, the utility of being able to move 20% faster. As soon as I'm not using this weapon, I know it and I feel it. So in almost any practical application other than the gun range, I think almost all of you will be using the Quick Step. All right, so let's move on to exotic weapons. Everybody knows what I'm going to say is the best weapon. I've already mentioned it plenty of times. So let's start with 2 other options. So now there's the Scorpio shotgun, which upon shooting targets, you apply stacks, and the duration of whatever debuffs you're applying depends on the number of stacks you hit. But if you land 2 stacks, they're poisoned. 4 stacks, they get disoriented. 6 stack will shock them. And as soon as you apply 9 stacks, the stacks cannot be refreshed anymore. And you have 10 seconds where they receive 20% amplified damage by all sources. And so this is key where, okay, awesome, it amplifies the damage from both your turret and your drone. Keep in mind, if you're running in a team with the Scorpio, once you apply all those stacks, everybody else does amplified damage against them as well. Now, another weapon that seems like it's awesome and can be if used in a team is the Strega. But the catch is, not used by you. You hope the teammate uses it. It's awesome in a group. Best if other allies use it. But yeah, essentially what it is when your teammate gets a kill, it marks all targets within the area, and they take 50% amplified damage per mark. And this can stack up to 5 times. Now, this sounds great. Now, imagine a full team running Stregas. Everybody kills somebody. These are stacking up really quick. However, the problem is skill kills will not proc this. So your drone or your turret getting a kill will not proc it for you. And you got to get the kill yourself. And if you're running a full skill build, you're probably not putting out that much weapon damage. So you're competing with everything else for the kill, and if anything else gets the kill, you won't get the marks. Even if you're running solo, it's super difficult to try to get your skills not to get the kill. Trying to get them to get it just damaged enough where you don't use it. If your teammates are using it, awesome. Look for marked targets. You'll do amplified damage. But that brings us to what everybody knew was coming. Capacitor is still the king. So, first of all, let's just talk about the weapon damage side of it. For every skill tier that you have, you're going to be adding 7.5% weapon damage. So, again, what we were talking about, if you despite having amped active, if you go with six skill tiers, you are going to be putting out 45% weapon damage. So it's effectively running 3 core attributes of weapon damage just by running 6 skill tier. I don't recommend doing that, but you could. And the reason why I say I don't recommend it, well, if you run 1 weapon core, okay, you're running, what, 37.5% weapon damage then, but then you're adding 15% weapon damage on top of that. So that just adds up to higher damage. But the damage bonus truly is not the reason why we are running the capacitor. The main reason we're running it, for every shot we land, we get a stack. And each one of those stacks is 1.5% skill damage. So this will net us up to 60% skill damage, the highest skill damage bonus we can get from any single weapon, while at the same time, because we're speccing into skill tiers, we're getting this huge weapon damage bonus. There's just really nothing else that can compete. And the one thing I will note is also, if you can get damage to targets out of cover on it, you will do more damage with your weapon. And while it does not affect the drone and the turret's damage, nothing else you would get in that minor attribute slot on your capacitor would either. But a lot of other skills do benefit from targets out of cover damage. So if you can, try to get damage to targets out of cover on your capacitor. Alright guys, so quickly before we go into the range, I'll just talk about, obviously we're using the assault turret, thus the ass, and the striker drone, thus the drone. So we got our ass drone build. As far as mods, on my drone I'm running a 7.5% duration mod, a 10% health mod, and a 5% damage mod. The cooldown we're expecting, depending on how you slot in skill haste and things like that, you'll be looking at 13 to 15 second cooldown or so, and your duration should be well above 300 seconds. So we have a 5+ minute duration on both of these. So that and our turret. As far as the turret mods, we got a 5% damage mod, a 10% health mod, and a 7.5% haste mod on the turret. And that's why the turret does come back a little bit quicker at 12 to 14 seconds versus our 13 to 15 that we have on our drone. And one thing I will note, tactically speaking, when you can, try to not have both skills down at the same time, unless you're using skilled. And actually, this one quick trick that I want you guys to be aware of. If you have skilled procced, if you blow up both of your skills at the same time, it will bring both of your skills back. So skilled will work for 2 skills at the same time, provided they both go down at the same time. All right, dudes. So now we're going to go into the range, and you won't have to look at my ugly mug anymore, because I will just do audio over it to explain some damage numbers and stuff, because I don't have those numbers in front of me here. But we want to go over base and kind of what each of the iterations brings to the table or removes from it. So awesome. Before I go, I will say thank you so much for checking this out, and I'll probably be back at the very end of this for a last little thing here. God, this is a long video. Thank you so much for any of you guys who stayed through this already.
All right, we're prepping for the overcharge here. This is with Memento, so we're not really gonna see the max numbers because we're gonna be lacking 30 or 60% additional skill efficiency. So you'll notice here we're maxing at about 327 for the turret, about 168 for the drone on the overcharge. So here's an overcharge with a force multiplier and no exotics. So we're getting almost up to 418K with the turret. Keep in mind the drone will be about 60% of that. And this is super easy. Now we throw the waveform in, and that kicks us up to 438K per bullet from the turret. I do want to quickly note the big drop off when the overcharge expires. We're going all the way down to 366K, but keep in mind that's 366K per bullet, which is still amazing. So now we're going to go with the Impetus as well as the combined arms and perfect in sync using the harmony. So no overcharge here. So while this version only puts out 318,000, you got to remember that takes less than a second and a half to get the max stacks, and that's competing with the 366 we just saw. So this is very easy, very viable, definitely worth considering if you don't have the exotics. Now we're starting to really move into the realm of the AFK version of the build, where we start using tech support, so the skill kills themselves will proc the skill damage. And this can be augmented with in sync to be able to get yourself that additional bonus every once in a while and still maintain survivability. And as I had mentioned, I will generally run the mop for this anyway, so every time I'm getting a skill kill, it gives me the health back. The best part of this is I stop doing anything and I'm just hiding under cover and I let the skills do the damage. The turret's still doing over of 250,000 per bullet. I think it's like 266k, or it's 261, there we go. So every variation of this is viable, which is why it's so cool. So you got to figure out which version works best for you. Let me know what you think. What variation do you like the best? Alright, so this is the Memento with the long-term and short-term buff. We are hitting about 326k per bullet. We also have all that weapon damage, the regen, we're getting the bonus armor when we pick up the trophies.
Alright dudes, so this is a long video with a lot of information. Hopefully it was super informative and just filled in some gaps or some ideas, some things you guys may have thought about. On that note, in case you guys consider anything that I did not cover in this, if you guys have any iterations you're trying or anything that I need to check out, please leave those comments down below. You guys be as safe as you need to be out there, and we will check you guys. I think I got another video. I think I'm inspired about something else. I'll probably be bringing another video sometime soon, but thank you guys so much. I know it's been a while, and I appreciate all of you guys who have hung around with the channel. Y'all be as safe as you need to be out there. We will check y'all in the dark zone. Peace out, everybody.